This gentleman is a financial consultant. We speak about retention, right? But here is this gentleman for 40 plus years has worked in the same organization. He's not only just a financial consultant and chartered accountant, but he's also a man who is really astute in handling FCRA and legalities, especially with charities. And he's also a change catalyst in the city of Mumbai, having founded the Logos Management Club, runs significant life-changing events in the city of Mumbai, one being the Christmas event for elites. And the other one, every year, faithfully organizes the Global Leadership Summit. Married to Shanta, who's here. May we put our hands together for one and only Raja B. Singh.
Is it possible to practice as a chartered accountant with integrity and be successful? That was the lurking question in my mind 40 years back when I started as a young chartered accountant. I went to some of my colleagues, and including some senior chartered accountants, and asked them the question, and they said, no, it is not with integrity. If you are in practice and having to do with the income tax department, which is considered to be one of the most corrupt departments of the government of India, Aruna, excuse me, they said, you should be ready for some unethical things if you want to make money. Not possible. And then I went to some pastors, and I asked the same question, is it possible to practice as a chartered accountant with integrity and be successful? And they said, yes, but depends what the meaning of success is. In a spiritual sense, you will be successful. Don't worry, you might be poor in this world, but in the spiritual sense, you will be successful. That's not the answer I was looking for. So I reframed my question, and I said, is it possible to practice as a chartered accountant with integrity and be successful in this world in a worldly sense? Well, I couldn't really find the answer at that time, and I was struggling with an answer. I was a born-again Christian by that time, and so by that time, I was fairly clear in my mind, I need to be a witness at the marketplace, but I also wanted to be successful. Will the two go together? That was the burning question, lurking question I didn't have an answer for. I continued to practice. One day, I remember, one of those days, I was sitting a little late in the evening in my office and preparing for a case which I had to argue in the tax department just 2 days later. And I was worried at that time. The case appeared to be a little difficult, but I somehow wanted to win the case as a young chartered accountant in practice, wanted to prove myself. Walks in a good friend of mine, a chartered accountant. He asked me, what's the matter? You are looking a bit tense. I said, this is the matter. He looked at it and agreed. It's a difficult case. But he said, don't worry, I have contacts. I can fix it up for you at a very reasonable price. For a young chartered accountant aspiring to be successful, very tempting offer. Well, because of my foundation with Christ, I declined the offer. But before he left the office, he looked at my face and said, at my eyes and said, Raja, you must be a fool. Look at me, how successful I am. If you want to be successful and make money, forget all these your so-called principles. A fool you are. He left the office. I went back that home with a very heavy heart, the question still ringing in my mind. Came back the next day, I opened my files, I started looking at it. I said a prayer and I started working on it. You know what happened? Sometime along the line, I had some bright idea arising out of that matter as I was preparing. And then I developed the case on that basis. Next day, I went to argue the case. And you know what happened? I won that case based on that new line of argument which I have developed on that day. Just imagine what would have happened if I had succumbed to that temptation. I would not have developed that new argument at that time. I learned my first lesson on that day. The challenge which arises while practicing with integrity sharpens your mind and produces excellence in you. That's the lesson I learned on that day. As the years went by, it appeared that I am doing well even with integrity. And then one day a client of mine who has a large business, a big family, many businesses there, but we were handling only 30% of those cases. And he comes to me and tells me, look, Raja, you are handling 30% of the cases by now. I want you by now to handle all the cases in our office. I was a little shocked, amused, of course, pleasantly surprised, because I know that was being handled, the 70% were being handled by somebody in the family, a chartered accountant, who was a very respected elderly gentleman, chartered accountant. And I said, why, what this change for? And he said, Mr. Singh, what he is able to achieve by paying bribe, you are able to achieve by fighting it out. And so I want you to do that. And he said, well, I would rather pay fees to a professional than pay bribe in the government department. I had my second lesson on that day, and that was, if only there is someone who can effectively help them towards that. The question is, are we ready to fill up that gap? That was the question. I must share with you this story of one gentleman who suddenly called me up. He was not a client of mine. He calls me up on phone and he tells me, look, Mr. Singh, I heard about you. I want your help. I have a big financial problem and I have heard about you and I would pay you whatever is your fees, and can you help me? Can I meet you? I gave him an appointment. On the appointed day, we met together. And as we sat together, at that time, I opened the topic, and I said, what is your big financial problem? And he said, my big problem is too much of money. I said, well, that is not a problem. He leaned forward and said, my problem is too much of money, all in black. Well, I started dealing with him. He had a business which essentially had to generate money in black. And in the next few months, we started working with him, and he worked sincerely with us. We moved his business from a non-compliant one to a compliant practice, compliant business for the future. And he liked it. He was so thankful to me. And then that time, one day, he came to my office, discussed the business, and at the end of it, he told me, he said, Mr. Singh, can I ask you one question? I said, I thought we have finished our discussion. I know we have discussed the official business. I have a question to ask you. What makes you different from most of the other consultants whom I have met? Wow, what an opportunity for you to share about Christ. And I exploited the opportunity to the full. You know what? I have a lesson to learn on that day, and that was integrity and excellence in profession can create for you the most effective platform for sharing the gospel. You know, by the time, as it went, these incidents and many other instances in my life gave me an answer for that lurking question. The lurking question in my mind, is it possible to practice as a chartered accountant with integrity and be successful in this world? In the worldly sense, I got an answer. What do you think the answer is? Yes, it is. That was the answer I had. And that's the biggest lesson I learned. In fact, the more important lesson I learned at that time is your integrity coupled with excellence will lead you to success in this life and impact eternity. I thought that's the biggest lesson that I learned in all those years. Wow, your integrity with excellence can lead you to success in this life and can also impact eternity. Well, by this time, I have developed for me a purpose in life. In fact, at that time, I remember I sat with my wife and we discussed, we prayed, and we put down the purpose in our life, maybe about 30 years back. Let me say that to you, what I had put at that time. And what I had put at that time is, the purpose in my life is to use my profession as a chartered accountant, my position in this world, and my positions in this society for the propagation of the gospel. This is how we put it together. But even as I looked into this, what I have learned is I can achieve this, my purpose in life, only if I handle my profession, my possession, and my position with integrity and excellence. That's the lesson that I have learned at that time. Well, we had our own struggle as we went along, personal, professional, we had our own struggles. But I must share this with you. One day, we decided to sell one of our properties there, and as you can imagine, there was nobody to buy paying the full amount in white. Everyone offered. Somebody, I said, I'm a Christian. They said, yeah, all Christians pay back. So I said, look, well, I'm a Christian, I won't accept. And they said, finally, I found one person who was ready to pay a slightly reduced amount, 85 lakhs of rupees, all in white. It was signed, agreed upon, and then not signed. The day was fixed when we had to go there and sign the documents and everything. And just a week before, my wife and I were sitting in a restaurant and having a meal together, and then I received a call from him to say, sir, I am sorry, I have not been able to arrange the full amount in white. The balance amount, a small amount, you will have to accept it in black. I said, well, that's not what we have agreed upon. And he said, well, I am not able to arrange it. There's no other way. At least 20 lakhs, you need to accept it in black, and the rest of it I will pay by check. I said, that's not possible. I won't be able to do. Then he said, I will not be able to go ahead with the deal. That was not something I was prepared for, because with that money I have already arranged a few things, and I had made some financial commitments which I cannot break. I had all those things already laid out, and I just cannot afford to not to sell that property on that day. So all that I could do was, I said, just give me 10 minutes. And I asked for time. I went to my wife and said, Shanta, it appears that we cannot go ahead with this deal unless we accept at least a small amount in black. And Shanta looked at me without batting an eyelid. She said, Raja, after being honest all these years, do you want to be dishonest at this time? I called him up without waiting for the 10 minutes, and I told him, I am sorry, gentlemen, I will not be able to take even 1 rupee in black. He said, the deal is off. You are clapping your hand, but do you know what I went through? I couldn't complete my meal that evening. I didn't sleep that night. Can you imagine what we went through in the next few days and weeks together? We went through all that. The only good thing that happened was it improved our prayer life. Well, after 3 months, we had another offer. And you know what? As against 85 lakhs, this deal was for 1 crore and 5 lakhs of rupees, all in white. The deal was completed. We signed, got the money, made all the commitments, and said, praise be to God. But you know what? I learned a very important lesson on that day. And that is, if you are serious about pursuing your purpose in life with integrity and excellence, you need to develop the commitment of Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. You remember what they said? The commitment of Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. If we are thrown into a blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and He will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But that's not all. But you know what? They said further, but even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your God or worship the image of gold that you have set in. Your majesty, make note of it. Even if the God does not serve, we will not serve yours. That was the commitment. This is what I learned. Not too long ago, my son completed his training as a pilot. And he went to Delhi to have his license collected, but he found it cannot be obtained unless you are ready to pay. Amount demanded was as small as 5,000 rupees to some of the lower level staff, and then only he will get. And that was the last day for him to get it. If he doesn't get it on that day, he will have to go back for the training, spend a few more lakhs of rupees, and loss of money and time, all that has to go. And he was trying his best without paying the money. Then with 30 minutes to go from Delhi, he calls me up and says, Daddy, it's now very clear, unless I pay that 5,000 rupees bribe, I am not going to become a pilot today. Before I could give my answer, he said, Daddy, even if I don't become a pilot, I am not going to pay that 5,000 rupees. And if I have to be one without qualification, not become a pilot, I will take it as God's will. I kept the phone down. I said a small prayer in my mind with tears welling in my eyes. And then 35 minutes later, I received the next call from my son. And he says, Daddy, time is up. And I have received it without paying a bribe. Few months later, my son joined as a pilot with Indigo, and in the commissioning service, my wife and I and his fiancée were sitting there, and his name was called out to receive it for the commissioned as a pilot with Indigo. And then as it was called out, that MC announced, we asked Mr. Naveen Raja Singh what is his favorite poem or quote that he likes, and he quoted from the Bible, Colossians chapter 3, verse 23, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters. You know what? Sitting there, I just tapped my wife and said, you know what? Naveen has learned not only integrity, but also the importance of excellence. I learned yet another lesson on that day, and that was a man of integrity will leave behind the greatest legacy, which is integrity and excellence in his children. Well, friends, as my time is approaching, I gave you in my life of 40 years, many lessons, but 8 of those lessons I told you. Purpose, integrity, and excellence. What Joshua Madan likes to call it as a pie. But I want to tell you the overarching lesson that I learned, and that is, pie is not a cakewalk. 40 years of struggle had made me also understand pie is not a cake, nor is it a cakewalk. Let me tell you that. In as much as pie is different from a cake, pie is not a cakewalk. Living a life of purpose, integrity, and excellence is challenging, and be ready for that hard work at all. Can I close with a piece of advice to you, even as I see a lot of young people who are sitting here? My advice to you is, if you are keen on fulfilling your purpose of being a witness in your workplace with integrity and excellence, my dear friend, this is my sincere advice. Commit this in your daily prayer. This is so important. You cannot do it unless you have the support of God. You know, I must introduce my favorite Bible verse to you. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust also in Him, and He will bring it to pass. Let me give you a supplementary advice. And the supplementary advice I would like to give you is this, that this is too big a matter So muster the support of your spouse as you endeavor to live your purpose of witnessing for Christ in your workplace with integrity and excellence. Without the support of your wife, it would be almost impossible. You know what? She needs to support you. She needs to pray for you. Whenever I am on my feet arguing a case in the revenue department, I know my wife is on her knees praying for me. She never fails to pray for me whenever I'm in an important meeting or a very tricky, difficult matter when I deal. She will never fail to pray. I always share that in the morning, and she will remember that time, and she will pray. It's so important for you. Let me give you this advice. In case you are not married, get married fast. Friends, pie is so important, but it's not a cakewalk. May God give you, even as I see some young faces sitting here, let me share my heart's cry as I stand here. How much I long to see that each of you live your purpose in life with integrity and excellence. God bless you.